This guy Atrain is a running stereotype.
So Atrain's a little bit different from the comic, but the Atrain that we find actually in the series is really just one big stereotype, unfortunately.
So this short clip that I'm going to play illustrates what I'm talking about, and spoilers coming. It's the scene in which he kills his girlfriend.
So, this really was not necessary. None of this was necessary.
So really, there's nothing really redeeming I can say about that scene. So some might posit or say, well, hey, he had to do that because he's part of the Seven, and he's got to cover their tracks, and he's got to cover his own tracks, and this was just a necessary evil. And my response to that is, that's some horse-ish. That makes absolutely no sense. Because in terms of the plot of season 1, really, there is no real justification for his just continuing to be like a quote-unquote murderous thug. It just kind of feeds into this whole stereotypical rendition of the character. And I'm not getting deep into the comic because, unfortunately, my knowledge of the comic is limited. But just focused on what they created, the writers created with the actual character on hand, he is totally, basically like a sociopath. And if they were going for a sociopath, that's okay. But unfortunately, they don't develop or tell us how he got there. So, for example, if we look at our favorite sociopath on the show, Homelander, we understand why Homelander is the way he is. There's nothing really redeeming to say about the character himself. When we look at Atrain, the depiction in season 1, we have somebody who's a murderer, kills somebody in episode 1. We have somebody who's a drug addict, who's a loudmouth, just a walking stereotype that is often perpetuated regarding American blacks. Every single facet of his character in season 1, and then the next season, but season 1 is basically a stereotype. Why is this important? Like, who cares? I think to me this is interesting because for a show that some people say is woke, it's just kind of weird that there are all these stereotypes. And they're not just stereotypes about black people. There are also stereotypes about Christians. There are stereotypes about women. For example, Starlight's character is very stereotypical, especially in season 1. And you could say that, truthfully, that a lot of the different characters in season 1, that they're caricatures. You could say, well, what's the big deal? It's just like comedy. The problem is that for a show that supposedly is woke or is going for diversity or addresses, for example, they address Christianity in a way where they're saying like Christianity is quote unquote homophobic and Christianity is wrong, and many of the concepts, for example, in Christianity are wrong, yet their characterization, for example, of Atrain is really very superficial and pretty much very stereotypical. It's nothing, there's nothing redeeming about the Atrain character. And I'm going back to the Atrain character because this video is about the Atrain character. But really, the series, especially season 1, has lots of stereotypes. And really, 3 main stereotypes that I notice would be, the first one would be Atrain, the black character. And he's not the only black character, but he's like a very strong character in the show because he's one of the 7. Then you have Starlight, and her character, there's a lot of stereotypical stuff that they do with her character. And then just in general, the concept of Christianity as something really it's not. All of this stuff is really very, very stereotypical. If you want, I explore this more in depth on my blog. That's sabcast.com or www.7iscompletionshop.com. stereotypical.com. Thanks for your time. Later.